Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/supportbuddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're restarting from the very beginning of our entire program. So I'd like to welcome all of you who's restarting the program that have maybe taken this program in the past, and also welcome all of you guys that haven't learned with me before. We're going to be studying over the next 7 months the foundational teachings of the Buddha that lead to this enlightened mental state. The enlightened mental state is where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. So all the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, the loneliness, boredom, the shyness, resentment, jealousy, even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. And you do this through training your mind and moving the mind to this enlightened mental state. So the way I'm going to start our classes each time is with a meditation. We're going to be doing breathing mindfulness meditation to get started. And now today I'll just guide you and give you an opportunity to experience breathing mindfulness meditation, perhaps for the first time, but I'll be teaching you as we're actually doing the meditation. You'll hear how I'm guiding you in the meditation. But then starting on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a 4-part series over 4 individual Wednesdays where I'm going to be teaching meditation in detail. And for some of you, you may not be able to attend the classes on Wednesday, depending on whether it's Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning for you or whenever it is for your time zone. But all the classes are going to be recorded on our YouTube channel, in Facebook, and on our podcast. So you'll be able to either attend live or you'll be able to listen to the recordings. So after our meditation, I'm then going to be moving in and explaining to you an introduction to the teachings of the Buddha. And then I'm going to be explaining to you the group learning program and the best way to receive the most benefits in learning and developing your practice over the next 7 months. So again, I'd like to welcome all of you and invite you to join for our meditation. The way that I do meditation is I start with a chant in order to ease us into meditation. You're going to hear me chanting this before and after each individual meditation. In the teachings of the Buddha, they're not based on belief, and there is no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship that is part of his actual teachings. So this chanting that I do, it's not a prayer or worship or anything like this. And I actually am going to be teaching students how to do this chanting as part of the group learning program. About 2 months from now, we'll be doing a 4-part series on Buddhist chanting to help you learn how to do the Buddhist chanting. If you're interested in seeing the chants that I'm going to be doing, you can actually go to our website. For those of you guys online, if you go to buddhadailywisdom.com and you click on the link that says free books, down towards the bottom, you're going to see the chanting sheet. It's a daily chanting sheet because we chant in the Pali language, but there's the English translations there for you. During the lifetime of the Buddha, everything that he taught was oral. So he taught orally, and the students would remember his teachings by chanting them. Every 2 weeks, they would come together and they would chant his teachings word for word for word for word. And if you read those English translations on the daily chanting sheet, you're going to see a lot of respect and admiration and gratitude for the Buddha. I suspect that the Buddha didn't actually create these chants himself, because by the time you get to enlightenment, you've already eradicated all arrogance and ego and boastfulness and putting yourself above people or below people. So the Buddha wouldn't have taught his students to chant these chants to him, but perhaps maybe during his life or after his death, they might have created these chants as a way to honor and respect him. Because if you learned from a teacher who didn't want anything from you and didn't expect anything from you, and they helped you move from the anger and sadness and frustration to this peace and joy, you'd probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that person too. So his students had an enormous amount of gratitude gratitude and admiration and respect for him, having helped them to move to this enlightened mental state. So I suspect that they are the ones who actually created these chants. But just understand that these aren't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony, or worship, or prayer, or anything like that. There's nothing mystical or magical about chanting. It's just to help ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. And during the lifetime of the Buddha, they only used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory because everything he taught was oral. They didn't write down the teachings until about 3 months, 6 months after his death. The time frame is kind of a little bit varied, but shortly after his death, they started writing down his teachings because the technology to write the teachings down didn't exist in that region of the world where the Buddha was from. He was born in modern day Nepal and taught in modern day Northeast India. And the technology to write things down existed in China at this time frame, but it didn't exist during this period of time in that particular location. So everything he taught was oral, and they used this chanting as a way to commit those teachings to memory. After the chanting, I'm going to be sharing some guidance with you to understand how to actually meditate while we're actually meditating in meditation. Then there's going to be a period of time where it'll just be quiet and we'll just be meditating together. You might hear an occasional sound in whatever environment you're in, but I'm going to teach you in meditation how to let that go and not allow the mind to be frustrated or agitated about those particular sounds or different things that might be going on in your environment. Then after the period of time where we've been meditating together, then I'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then from there, we'll move into sharing the content about an introduction to the teachings of the Buddha, and then I'll introduce you to the group learning program itself. And as we go, I'll be opening up for questions. Those of you guys that are in YouTube, Facebook, or Zoom, you can be asking questions through putting that into the comment section, and I'll be able to see your question. Or in Zoom, you have the added ability to electronically raise your hand, and then you can open up your mic and ask any and all questions that you like. So if you'd like to join for meditation, we usually start in either the seated, lying, or standing positions. There's also a walking position for meditation as well. The seated position is common to be able to learn meditation in when you're first getting started. You might be sitting on the floor, you might be sitting in a chair. It's really up to you where you choose to sit. If you're on the floor, you might put some cushions under your rear in order to get the hips up in the air. This lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and it allows the circulation to flow. Whereas if you're in a chair, you might just sit with your feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles. Whatever is comfortable for you. There's not just one fixed position to be meditating in. It's really comes down to sitting where you're not luxurious and you're not experiencing pain in the body, but instead the body's comfortable. So the lower body should be nice and comfortable. The hands and the arms, same thing, nice and comfortable. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. And if that's comfortable for you, you could use it. But this practice isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way, so you might not choose to do it that way. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people like to put their palms up. Some people just rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So it's really whatever is comfortable for you. The lower body and hands and arms should be relaxed and comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation so that you can actively train the mind during your meditation. This isn't a time to zone out or anything like that. It's a time to train the mind through active, purposeful training. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. And by keeping the upper body erect, this allows the mind to stay attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid with the upper body, the mind might be overactive or uptight. So by having the upper body erect, not only does it keep the mind attentive and alert, but by having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it allows you to breathe in naturally through the nose, fully expanding your lungs, getting nice breaths in and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to ease us into the meditation with some chanting. If you know these chants, you're welcome to join along in the chanting. And for those of you guys that haven't learned them yet, I'll be teaching them as part of this program as we go forward. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakevanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakeva Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. With the lower body and the hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาพุทธังมหาเกวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมโมโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตวาปมานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you'd like to gradually ease your way out of meditation. So I'd like to once again welcome all of you guys, those of you guys that have joined us since we started meditating, those of you guys that have been rejoining us now, starting the program over again, or maybe brand new students who are just starting to learn with me for the very first time. Whenever students start to learn with me for the very first time, I usually share a bit of information to help you to be able to understand how to approach the teachings of the Buddha and get the most benefit out of them. That the teachings of the Buddha, it's not based on a bunch of beliefs. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping that something happens good when you die. That's not the way his teachings are structured. Instead, you're learning certain teachings, you're investigating them, you're examining them. You are then reflecting on those teachings in order to independently verify whether they're true or whether they're false. And then you're practicing these teachings. And as you're practicing his teachings, you're uprooting certain pollutions that he discovered in the mind. And by uprooting these pollutions, your mind becomes more peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. Ultimately, if you stay with it long enough, you'll actually get to the point where the mind's enlightened, that you're no longer experiencing any discontent feelings. All the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. You'll notice that the mind is focused and concentrated. You have clarity of mind. You have deep memory because these pollutions have been eradicated from the mind, so the mind performs more optimally. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships will really blossom. You'll get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood anymore because the causes and conditions that are producing that bad mood have been uprooted out of the mind, and the mind is just always joyful. It's always peaceful. There's always happiness in the mind. There's unconditioned happiness. But in the unenlightened state, the mind can't do that because it's polluted with certain pollutions. So the Buddha didn't describe that the way the world should be, and that if everybody follows these rules and commandments, that then the world will become peaceful. And now everybody needs to follow these rules and commandments. That's not what he actually taught. There aren't any rules or commandments in his teachings. There aren't any rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship. Instead, what he's doing is he's teaching you and guiding you what it took for him to be able to get to that peaceful and calm, serene and content mind with joy. He's explaining to you what it took for him to get to that enlightened mental state. And then if you choose on your own, you can choose to learn, investigate, and examine those teachings. You can learn to then reflect on those teachings to independently verify them, and then practice those teachings, integrating them into your life so that more and more you're uprooting these pollutions out of the mind, and you'll see the mind moving to this more peaceful, joyful mental state slowly but surely. And what you're doing here is you're awakening to the natural laws of existence. This is what the Buddha taught, is these natural laws. These natural laws are affecting you, whether you're aware of them or not. But in the unenlightened state, with a lack of wisdom, the mind doesn't understand these natural laws. It hasn't awoke to that wisdom of the teachings of the Buddha with these natural laws. And because of a lack of wisdom, an individual will naturally make unwise decisions that produces unwholesome results in your life. Part of those unwholesome results that you experience are the sadness, the frustration, the irritation, all those discontent feelings. That's part of the unwholesome results that you're experiencing as a result of just having a lack of wisdom and not understanding these natural laws. That when your mind is struggling and having difficulties, it's going to experience the anger, the sadness, the frustration, because the mind in the unenlightened state doesn't understand the world around it. It lacks wisdom of these natural laws of existence. So you're gradually building your wisdom on this path to enlightenment to awaken to these natural laws. And then when you have this wisdom, you're naturally going to make wiser decisions that then produce wholesome results in your life. So you've done the same exact thing related to the natural law of gravity. There's a natural law that we were all affected by, whether we were aware of it or not, as we were growing up, 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old. We were affected by this natural law. Nobody controls this natural law. Nobody turns it on or turns it off. It just is affecting every being on the planet. And with the lack of wisdom of that natural law of gravity, we made unwise decisions. We fell down, we bumped our head, we broke open our elbow, we busted our knee, we had all kinds of different difficulties because we were making unwise decisions as it relates to this natural law of gravity. But slowly but surely, we gradually awoke to this natural law, and then we started making wiser decisions. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalk. We started tying our shoes a little bit tighter. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around as a little kid. We experienced the ability to navigate the world more readily, that we had this wisdom of the natural law of gravity. And now we're at the point where we can potentially ride a bicycle, we can climb ladders, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we're fully awake. We fully cultivated the wisdom of this natural law of gravity. By the time we were 10, 12, 14, that gradual training that it took in order for us to understand this natural law of gravity, we now make full decisions that are wise based on this natural law. And we don't find ourselves tripping over our shoelaces, falling down, and the things that we used to experience as a kid. Well, the same thing needs to occur related to these natural laws of existence that the Buddha taught, that you need to awaken to these natural laws so that then you'll make wiser decisions that produce wholesome results in your life. One of the wise decisions is to train your own mind, and the Buddha is going to teach you through his teachings about how to train your mind. But then he's going to also teach you about the world around you. He's going to teach you the way the world is. He's not teaching you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. And this is how you awaken to the wisdom of what's going on in the world around you. And now you'll make wiser and wiser decisions naturally on your own, without people telling you what to do or without people having expectations of you. The Buddha never had expectations of his students. He wasn't trying to convince you of anything. He wasn't trying to force you or control you to do anything. His mind was already peaceful. It was already joyful. He was just helping you to understand how he actually acquired that mental state. So all those with a sincere interest in learning and practicing and developing the mind to eradicate these feelings where the mind's going up and down throughout your life, you can learn how to train your mind to eradicate those feelings and get to the peace and joy where the mind is permanently in that mental state. And the way you do that is through acquiring wisdom. So it's very important that as I'm teaching you in this class and all the future classes that you ever take with me, that you don't believe anything that I say. Don't believe what I say. Don't believe what I write in books. Don't believe any of the videos or podcasts that you hear from me. You shouldn't believe anything that I ever share with you. But instead, you're on this independent journey as an independent practitioner to learn and intellectually understand the teachings, and then reflect on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice the teachings. And as you're practicing them, this is what's going to uproot the pollutions out of your mind, and you'll see the mind will gradually move towards this peace and calm, serenity and contentedness with joy. So you're not a devotee, you're not a follower. That's not what the teachings of the Buddha are describing. Instead, if you would like to learn and develop on the path to enlightenment, think of yourself as an independent practitioner, that you're independently on this journey with a teacher essentially serving as a tour guide. We're kind of pointing out to you the things that you need to learn and you need to understand, but then it's up to you to do that work, to apply your determination, your dedication, and your diligence to come to class, to read books, to meditate, to seek help from your teacher by asking questions. Because it's one thing to learn in a class like this, but it's a whole nother thing to apply it to your day-to-day life. So you're going to hear as I go forward in today's class about how you can get personalized guidance on your journey to enlightenment, and everything that I share with you is available at no cost, whether it's the books, the audiobooks, the classes, courses, retreats, videos, podcasts, personal guidance, all these things. It's available for you to be able to help you to move your mind to this enlightened mental state. So what I'm going to do to get you started, in addition to what I just shared, is to help you understand a bit of an introduction to the teachings of the Buddha, so that you'll understand more about what the Buddha taught kind of from afar, kind of looking in at the teachings of the Buddha. I'm actually going to be sharing the teachings of the Buddha with you starting next Sunday so that you can understand exactly what he taught. But just to get you started, I'm going to help you to understand a little bit of an introduction to his teachings. And the first thing to share with you is, what is a Buddha? I'll help you to understand now what a fully perfectly enlightened one is, or what a Buddha is. There's three main criteria of what make a Buddha a Buddha. The first criteria is that they attain enlightenment through their own efforts without any guidance from any teachers. They're able to fully get to this enlightened mental state without the help of any teachers or any guides. Then the second criteria is that once they awaken to enlightenment through their own independent efforts, they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing the teachings that it takes to get to enlightenment. They help others to be able to understand how to get to this enlightened mental state. So they dedicate their life and they share their teachings for the remainder time of their life, and countless people get to enlightenment during their lifetime. And then the third criteria is that they preserve their teachings in such a way that after their death, their teachings are able to help countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the three main criteria of what make a Buddha, is that they attain enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing those independently discovered teachings, and countless people get to enlightenment during their lifetime. And they know that they get to that enlightened mental state because their mind's peaceful and joyful. And then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. So you can get to enlightenment and you'll be an enlightened being, but you won't be a Buddha at that point. You won't be a fully perfectly enlightened one, because you're not going to getting to enlightenment in the same way that we're describing here with the Buddha. And there's other criteria of what makes a Buddha as well. A Buddha is very rare in the world. The last Buddha that is currently known to the world existed over 2,500 years ago. And one of the reasons why is because of this criteria of what makes a Buddha, these three criteria, and then these additional ones that I'm going to share with you here. The reason why a Buddha, or a person who's going to become a Buddha, can actually get to enlightenment on their own is because they have a profound memory, being able to recall countless details about their current life and their past lives as well. They put together all this wisdom and then they apply it in their last life to be able to then get to enlightenment on their own. So for example, you have kind of like a limited capacity in your mind. You have limited hard drive space, like maybe 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte in your mind, and you have a certain capacity. And when you experience new things, you need to delete old files in order to store new files. This is the reason why you have spotty memories about your past. Like if you think back to your childhood, you remember some things about your childhood, but you don't have direct recall. You don't have exact details of exactly what was happening during your childhood. You just have kind of spotty memories about what was going on there. But in the last 5 years or so, you might have pretty good recall about what it is that you've been doing over the last 5 years or so. And this is because you have a limited capacity in your mind where you need to delete old files in order to store new files. So as you delete those old files, there's still some remnants of those files still existing, but by and large, you've had to delete all those old files in order to store these new files. Well, a person who's going to become a Buddha doesn't have that. Instead, they have an unlimited capacity that they can remember countless details about their current life in their past lives as well. So they put together all these details in their last life in order to help them to be able to get to enlightenment. So they've cultivated wisdom over multiple lifetimes. Another thing about a Buddha is that they can quickly determine the condition of somebody's mind by spending time with them. And they don't do this in a judgmental way to look down on anybody, but instead, when a Buddha is interacting with their students, they're able to then help them to be able to get to enlightenment by understanding a student's mind. By understanding their mind, they can then provide them teachings that will be able to help them. But they only help a student and they only provide content to be able to help them when a student's asking questions. They don't just show up in your life and kind of start pushing you around and telling you what to do. Instead, as a student asks various questions about their life and about the things that they need to accomplish and the struggles and difficulties that they're experiencing, a Buddha is able to quickly determine what the issues are and then be able to describe to that person how to remedy those and how to address those. And then the last thing that makes a Buddha is that they're a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. By the time they get to enlightenment, they fully eradicated all the pollution in their mind, and they're now fully functioning as an enlightened being and as an actual Buddha, a fully perfectly enlightened one. So they're a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. And the reason why is because they fully eradicated these pollutions, but also they understand that their students learn just as much through their spoken word as they do through their actions. So the way that a Buddha is going to teach a student is through their spoken words, but then also through their actions, that their students are observing them in life, the way that they interact through their intentions, their speech, their actions, the way that they conduct themselves, whether they have loving kindness or compassion or generosity. So they're going to be functioning as a fully perfectly enlightened Buddha, and this is going to help their students to actually be able to learn and understand how to develop their mind and get to this enlightened mental state. So a Buddha is not going to be teaching one thing and then doing something completely different. They're going to be teaching something and then they're going to be practicing those same teachings as well. So they're a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. And then in terms of understanding what the teachings of the Buddha are, I'm going to share with you some content here to help you understand what they are. They're a path to attaining enlightenment in this life through purification of the mind. The Buddha discovered these 10 individual pollutions in the mind. They're referred to as the 10 fetters. And the reason why the word fetter is used is because during ancient times, they would attach a fetter to the leg of a prisoner. This was like a shackle around your ankle with a chain and a ball. And this is how they confined prisoners to a certain area. Where today we put people in a jail cell, essentially. Back then they would attach this fetter that would keep them confined to a certain area. So these 10 fetters or these 10 pollutions, these taints or defilements are what the Buddha discovered in his own mind, and he learned how to eradicate those with certain tools and techniques. And when you eradicate those from the mind, you're no longer trapped in the unenlightened state. But otherwise, as long as those pollutions are there, an individual keeps experiencing over and over and over again the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the agitation, the annoyance, and all these other discontent feelings. But you can purify your mind of these fetters or of these pollutions. And I'm going to be describing these to you as we go forward in our program at different times. You're going to be learning about the 10 fetters, because everything that the Buddha taught in one way or another is helping you to eliminate those 10 fetters. He doesn't necessarily say that when he's teaching you things like the Four Noble Truths or the Eightfold Path or meditation training or things like this, but just understand that everything that he's teaching you is coming back to this purification of the mind, and that's what's producing these improved qualities of mind, that you're uprooting these pollutions out of the mind. And everybody and anybody who's ever been born has experienced these 10 fetters, that you're going to experience these 10 fetters being in the mind. And as you learn about them, you're not believing that these exist, but as you learn them in the future, you'll hear me talk about the various symptoms as a result of having these pollutions. And then you'll be able to independently verify through your own direct experience that you indeed have these in your mind, because you'll hear the symptoms that we describe, and then you'll know, like, oh yeah, okay, that's from that particular fetter. And then you learn the tools and the techniques of how to eliminate these from the mind. And as you're eliminating them and you're purifying the mind, you're going to notice the mind experiencing these improved qualities, where enlightenment is this mental state that is attained either during your life or at death. And by attaining enlightenment during your life, you'll experience the rest of this life with the peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy, that you'll experience this permanent mental state. By the time you get to enlightenment, it's impossible for you to experience anger, because the causes and conditions that produce the anger have been uprooted out of the mind. And by attaining that during your life, you'll then experience the rest of your life in that peaceful and joyful mental state. And you can also experience this at death too. There's some people who experience it at the time of death. So you'll have eliminated all those discontent feelings that I talk about, like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, jealousy, resentment, stress, anxiety. And this is coming from purification of the mind. And because you've purified the mind, there's this high degree of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of mind. The mind starts performing more optimally. You'll notice that there's this deep wisdom about the world around you, and you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful towards all beings. Right now, you might find that to be challenging. There's probably certain relationships that you have where you can be very polite and very respectful, but there's probably other relationships where you might be hostile or bitter, or have animosity or resentfulness in those relationships. And that's due to the pollution that's in one's own mind. And when you uproot that out of your mind, you'll be able to then be polite, kind, friendly, respectful in all relationships. And this is where life becomes super enjoyable, because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile to others. So therefore, bitterness and hostility and aggression isn't coming back to you either. You know how to deal with these kinds of things with a calm mind rather than being shaken up by these experiences. This is why you'll notice that your personal and professional relationships will be conducted with ease, that you'll really blossom in these relationships because you're no longer being bitter and harsh and hostile yourself. So therefore, people aren't being bitter and harsh and hostile with you. Right now, you're probably experiencing that to a certain degree, but you can change all of that and uproot that. And what you're purifying the mind of is what's called craving, anger, and ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. These are referred to as the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. I'm going to be teaching you this as part of chapter 8 in our book, in our program, that when we get to chapter 8, I'll be teaching you the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. This is kind of a high-level description of understanding what's going on in the mind, where the 10 fetters is a very detailed description, and the Buddha is commonly teaching this way, where it's kind of like a layered effect. We're starting next week on Sunday, you're going to learn the 4 Noble Truths, which gives you like a bit of a window into the unenlightened mind. And the Buddha, in 4 simple statements, gets to the real heart of explaining the problem of the unenlightened mind, the cause of that problem, how to eliminate it, and then he explains the path forward of how to completely eliminate these discontent feelings and the problem from the mind. But it's the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires that goes into more detail beyond the 4 Noble Truths. It goes a level deeper, where you broaden your understanding of the problems in the unenlightened mind and the cause of those problems, and you start to deepen your understanding. But then it's the 10 fetters that really take you into detail to understanding what's going on. So this is helping you to get deeper and deeper and deeper to understanding your own mind and how it functions. And ultimately, as you're purifying the mind of craving, anger, and ignorance, you'll be able to experience these benefits or these advantages of the enlightened mind. What the Buddha is teaching you is the natural laws of existence, namely the natural law of Gama. Now, you might be familiar with the word karma. This is from the Sanskrit language. The Pali language, which the original source teachings of the Buddha are in, uses this word Gama. And if this word translated to just one English word, I would use that because it's much easier to use English. So when you see me teaching, I'm going to be teaching predominantly everything in English. There's only two things that I still need to describe using the Pali word because they don't translate to just one English word. So Gama is one of those things, or some people think of it as karma. Again, it's the same natural law, just using a different language. This natural law of Gama, it's cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. Essentially, it's a sequence of events. It's not something to believe in. It's nothing that you just, believe in. It's not a concept. It's not an opinion. It's not a view. It's a natural law that's functioning at all times. And this is what you're awakening to, is this natural law of Gama, of cause and effect, or action and result. There's no being that's overseeing this natural law. There's no being that's turning it on and turning it off. It's not punishments and rewards. It's not anything mystical or magical or anything like that. It's literally cause and effect, or action and result. When you make a certain decision, either wise or unwise, it's going to produce a certain result, either wholesome or unwholesome result, or wholesome Gama or unwholesome Gama. And with a lack of wisdom, you're going to tend to make unwise decisions, and it's going to produce unwholesome results or unwholesome Gama in your life. But as you gradually awaken to the wisdom of the natural law of Gama, then you'll make wiser and wiser decisions, producing more and more wholesome Gama, or wholesome results in your life. So this natural law, it's helping you to understand that what you experience in life is a result of your decisions. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state, we blame what we experience on somebody else. And as long as an individual is continuing to blame other people for what you're experiencing, you're going to continue to experience those unwholesome results, because other people aren't the ones who are actually causing you to be angry or frustrated or irritated, or the other results that you experience in your life. It's not being caused by others. It's not good luck. It's not bad luck. It's not destiny or fate. There's no being who's punishing you or rewarding you. It's your own decisions that are producing any particular results in your life. And what the Buddha is teaching you is how to understand this natural law so that you can make wiser and wiser decisions, and then experience more and more wholesome outcomes, or wholesome results, or wholesome Gama. And you can see the truth for yourself, that as you're learning these natural laws and then you're practicing them, that this is where your relationships really improve. Where with a lack of wisdom of these natural laws, you'll think that you're making all the wisest decisions in the world. You'll think that you have all the best intentions in the world, and you'll say something or you'll do something, and it'll kind of blow up on you, and you'll be left surprised and mesmerized, like, why is this happening? I don't understand why this is happening, because in your own mind, you think you have all the best intentions. You think that maybe you're speaking or acting in a wonderful way, but that's just because the mind lacks wisdom of this natural law. So the Buddha doesn't teach you about what you should do or shouldn't do. He doesn't give you a decision tree that if this happens, do that, and if this happens, do that. Instead, he's helping you to understand this natural law so that you can then navigate the world with this wisdom. And that's why you're interested in not believing anything, but instead you're intellectually learning the teachings. You're examining them and investigating them. And then you're reflecting to independently verify, because you've experienced enough things in life that you can learn the things that I'm going to share with you related to this natural law and all the other teachings the Buddha taught. And you can look at your own life and you can see how you've been experiencing these exact same things. So you can independently verify through your reflection that this natural law of Gama is true. And then when you start practicing the teachings, you start applying them in your day-to-day life, you start integrating them, not just the meditation, but all the other teachings as well, you'll acquire wisdom, and you'll be able to see the improvement to the condition of your mind and the condition of your life. So the Buddha is not explaining the way the world should be, and if everybody follows these rules and commandments, then the world will become peaceful. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And now when you understand the way the world is through this cause and effect, or action and result, the natural law of Gama, you'll navigate this world with that wisdom, with wiser and wiser decisions. You'll be able to make decisions on your own that are wise, and you'll see the wholesome outcomes that are coming back as a result of that. So you're training the mind to experience complete peace and joy through acquiring this wisdom of the natural laws of existence, and you're eradicating these pollutions of the mind. The teachings of the Buddha are timeless, that what he described 2,500 years ago, that he spoke very clear, very concise, and very precise. And he describes these natural laws for you. And these natural laws, they don't change. So the natural laws that he describes from 2,500 years ago are the same exact natural laws that are existing today. So his teachings are actually timeless, and you'll be able to see this because when I teach you his teachings, I'm oftentimes using his own words, so you can see that he spoke very clear, very concise, and very precise. I don't need to interpret his teachings for you. You don't need to interpret his teachings. It's not like one person can interpret them one way and another person can interpret them another way. It's very clear, very concise, and very precise. You'll be able to see very clearly what he actually taught. Where a teacher comes in is some of his teachings, they're related to another teaching or another teaching or another teaching. And you can study with a teacher who's helping you see this integration and see how they all apply, and then you can apply them in your day-to-day life yourself. So his teachings are very easy to understand in terms of when you read them, they're very clear and very concise and very precise, and they're timeless. So you'll be able to see that for yourself. There are points in his teachings where he teaches the cycle of rebirth, and he teaches these 5 realms of existence, like hell, the animal realm, afflicted spirits realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. When a student is first starting off on their journey to enlightenment, I suggest that they set aside the cycle of rebirth. Even the cycle of rebirth is not something that you ever believe in. You can actually independently verify that it's true. Right now, you might not have the wisdom of understanding how to determine whether the cycle of rebirth or these 5 realms of existence are true. But as you keep going in your journey to enlightenment, you may get to a point, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, that you might decide that you're ready to start approaching the cycle of rebirth and understanding it. And there's wisdom to be able to help you to learn it, to reflect on it, to independently verify, and then practice to be able to see the truth for yourself. In this program itself, for the most part, I don't talk about the cycle of rebirth. We do kind of introduce a little bit of it towards the end of the program in chapter 20, I think it is, that you'll be able to see a bit of content there around the cycle of rebirth. But that's after you've already learned all the core central teachings and you're well on your way in your journey to enlightenment. So the cycle of rebirth is something that you can easily set aside because what's happened in the past, it's in the past. It doesn't matter right now. And what may or may not happen in the future related to the cycle of rebirth, it's in the future. It doesn't matter right now. The fact is that right now you're in the human realm. You're experiencing discontentedness like anger, sadness, annoyance, disappointment, frustration, agitation, and you might be interested in eliminating that from the mind. And that's what's important. So if you start with the core central teachings, which is what I'm going to do in this program, is start you off with the core central teachings, then that's what will really help you to get past those discontent feelings. But then in the future, you're going to potentially be interested in learning about the cycle of rebirth because the Buddha shared this teaching for specific reasons. The reason why is because it's true reality, and this is the way the world is. And as you're eliminating the pollution out of your mind, you might experience the recall of your past lives. You might start having residual memories of your past lives. And if you didn't understand the cycle of rebirth and that you have been beings in the past, and now you're starting to have vivid memories of past lives, like maybe you're having these vivid memories of a murder that took place, or maybe you're having vivid memories of maybe some sexual abuse or something like this that's transpired in the past that you know it didn't happen in this lifetime, but yet you're having these vivid memories of it. You could be really shaken up by that if you didn't understand that these were memories from the past and you can just let them go. Or as you're awakening your mind and you're eliminating this pollution, not only can you sometimes observe past lives, but you can start experiencing communication with beings from these various realms. The hell realm, beings can oftentimes communicate with human beings. Of course, you interact with animals at different times. The afflicted spirit realm, which some people might refer to as ghost, you can experience communication from these beings. Of course, you communicate with human beings all the time, but then even the heavenly beings, you might experience communication with these beings. And if you didn't understand these realms and you started experiencing this communication from these beings, you could really be shaken up. And it's just like a conversation in a restaurant. If 2 or 3 tables over, somebody was talking in a restaurant, you could just ignore that conversation. The same thing is true when you're starting to get communication with beings from the hell realm, the afflicted spirit realm, or the heavenly realm. If you like, you can just ignore this conversation. You don't need to go forward with that. But this is something that you can experience as you're lifting pollution out of the mind. You can even experience seeing these beings. The hell beings, the afflicted spirits, and the heavenly beings are formless. They don't have physical form, But there's some human beings that can see these beings in the hell realm, the afflicted spirit realm, and the heavenly realm. And as your mind becomes more awake and you eliminate more and more pollution, you might actually start experiencing this for yourself. So if you didn't understand the cycle of rebirth, in that you've had previous lives and these memories that could potentially be coming back to your mind, that you could experience this communication with these beings, or you might start seeing these beings. If the Buddha didn't explain this to you the way the world is, you would have some challenges and some difficulties because your mind would potentially be shaken up by this. But if you understand the cycle of rebirth in these 5 realms of existence, and you understand that this is quite normal for an individual to sometimes experience these things, then your mind doesn't need to be shaken up by it. So there are specific reasons why he taught the cycle of rebirth. He didn't just slip it in. It's not a belief. You can actually independently verify it. The Buddha also taught about God. Sometimes people think that he didn't teach about God. Some people think that he rejected God or he denied the existence of God. But if you go back to his original source teachings, you will see that he actually taught about God. He doesn't make God as a central role in his teachings because God's not the one who determines whether you attain enlightenment or not. Instead, he placed you at the center of his teachings because it's you that needs to do the learning, the developing of the mind, the training of the mind, and gradually move the mind to this enlightened mental state. So while the Buddha does teach about God in his teachings, he's not a central role. And the Buddha doesn't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship of God because that's not what you need to understand in relationship to this God. So when we get to chapter 18, I'm going to teach you about this being of God, and it may conflict with things that you've already learned in other places, but I'll help you to be able to see why it's important to understand God in this way. Because in some places, an individual might decide that they would like to have a relationship with God, and that that's what they would like to do in terms of getting to enlightenment. It's not God who determines whether you get to enlightenment or not, but maybe you would like to maintain a relationship with God. But if you have fear of God, or you think God is punishing you and rewarding you, or if you're praying to God and asking him for things to change in your life, your mind isn't fully understanding this being of God. Or in some situations, an individual might not be interested in any relationship with God whatsoever. So I'm going to teach you how to do that as well and still get to enlightenment. So depending on whether you're interested in having a relationship with God or not having a relationship with God, you can still get to enlightenment. Just like you can have a relationship with your neighbor or maybe not, and you can still have a wonderful life, whether you have a relationship with your neighbor or not. Having a relationship with God is the same thing. You can have this relationship and experience certain results there, or you cannot have a relationship with God. But either way, you can still get to enlightenment. But the Buddha does teach about God. But you'll occasionally see people that say that the Buddha rejected God or he denied the existence of God. This isn't actually true. If you go back to the original source teachings, you'll see what he actually taught. But the vast majority of the world isn't learning with the original source teachings of the Buddha, and this is why you'll see these conflicts and these discrepancies in the way that people represent his teachings. In terms of what the teachings of the Buddha are, is that there's this large collection of teachings that we refer to as the Pali Canon. This is the largest, most complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha. These are the discourses that were documented after his death. There's other parts to the Pali Canon as well, but the part that I'm going to base my teachings on and the base of what the Buddha taught are the discourses themselves. Some people refer to these as suttas. These were documented shortly after his death by his students, that by an individual learning and training their mind, getting to enlightenment, they're never going to forget that wisdom. So the Buddha taught for 45 years, from the age of 35 until the age of 80, and there were countless people that got to enlightenment during his life. And the people who got to enlightenment, they knew that they were enlightened because they were no longer experiencing any anger or sadness or frustration or any of these other discontent feelings. Their mind gradually moved to that enlightened mental state. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll never forget the wisdom that it took for you to get to that enlightened mental state, because you're going to be practicing it readily. So shortly after the death of the Buddha, 500 people came together and actually documented his teachings, and we refer to this as the Pali Canon. Today it's organized into 45 volumes of teachings, and these books are actually quite thick. I have one of them right here. It's about 10 centimeters thick, or about 4 or 5 inches thick, and this is just one of those volumes. And this book series that I share, which is 13 volumes, it consolidates this into a more manageable, digestible amount of content. Because in the Pali Canon, there's a lot of repetition. You can read kind of 100 pages and there can just be like one word changing over and over and over again. It can be essentially the same content with one word or one sentence changing over and over and over again. So this 13 book series, which is titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden, it consolidates this into 13 books so that then you can learn it and you can understand it and then actually move your mind to enlightenment by the training that the Buddha actually taught. And essentially, one of the things that I share related to what the teachings of the Buddha are is it's to heal from what hurts you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But you need to understand what it is that actually is hurting you. It's not something external. Sometimes people think that what's hurting them is something external. So they might go around the world and try to change the world and try to change other people to do things your way. But when you start to understand through the teachings of the Buddha, which I'm going to help you to start understanding next week on Sunday, is that when you start understanding the original teachings of the Buddha, you can understand that what's actually causing these feelings to arise in the mind is inside your own mind. And when you understand what those causes and conditions are and you uproot them, you can heal from what hurts you so that you never need to hurt again. So rather than blaming other people or blaming the circumstance or blaming the situation, blaming your government, blaming your boss, blaming your life partner, your children for what you're experiencing, you're going to start to understand what's truly causing these painful feelings so that then you can actually eradicate them. Essentially, the teachings of the Buddha are the best self-help program that you'll ever find because it's been well vetted over 2,500 years that it's here for a reason. It's continued to exist in this world because it works. And you'll be able to see that gradually, slowly but surely, as you learn and practice these teachings and you dedicate your time, effort, and energy to developing your mind, that you can heal from what hurts you so that you never, ever, ever need to hurt ever again. So I'm going to pause here before I go into the next content that I'm going to share and see if you guys have any questions on anything that I've been talking about so far. You can put those questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that, and then I'll be able to answer your question. If you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions you like by just opening up your mic, and then we'll be able to hear you here, and we'll be able to hear you on the live stream as well. So is there anybody that has any questions about anything that I've been sharing so far? Okay, it looks like we have a question here coming in on YouTube from Joseph. Sir, in the book, you said to trust all beings. What does that mean? So if you read the book, there's a part where I'm talking about how by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be able to trust all beings, that you won't have this judgment where you're judging other people and you're looking at their clothes or their hair or maybe something about their body or their race or ethnicity, and you're judging them. And then you're saying, oh, I can't trust this person because they have tattoos or because they have an earring or because they have a nose ring or because of this ethnicity or this race. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be able to trust all beings. But whenever you're trusting individuals, it's important that you practice discernment. Everything related to the teachings of the Buddha are based in discernment, which is wise decision making. So you're going to need to make wise decisions. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're not judging people based on these superficial things like the clothes they're wearing or what country they live in or where they're from or where they were born or things like this, that you can trust individuals. And then you practice discernment, which is wise decision making. So for example, if I had a young child and I saw somebody out in the public and they were offering their services to babysit this child. Well, okay, I trust this individual. I've spent some time with them. I've talked to them. I've maybe checked their references or what have you. And I know that they can take care of my child. So you maybe hire this person to come Friday morning or Friday evening to take care of your child. And now when they show up to your place, you smell alcohol on their breath and you can tell that they're intoxicated. Well, in this situation, you've trusted them because you've hired them to show up. You haven't judged them. You've used discernment to make wise decisions for them to come take care of your child. But now with your discernment and you see that they're intoxicated, you realize that it's unwise for them to take care of your child. And now you need to change your plans as a result of that. So this is what trusting all beings is that you trust all beings and you're not judging them based on these kind of things, but instead you're using discernment or wise decision making based on what it is that you're trying to accomplish in the world. Let's see, we have some more questions coming in. I'm going to be checking here on Facebook, and I see some coming in on Zoom as well. Let's see, this question on Zoom is from Fiona. She says, "Hello, teacher. Can you attain enlightenment if you have doubt in the cycle of rebirth?" So by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you will have eradicated all your doubt. There won't be any doubt in the mind because you would have seen a certain amount of progress to the condition of your mind. You will have independently verified these things. So right now, you most likely have doubt. You might have doubt in the Buddha. You might have doubt in his teachings. You might have doubt in the community that you're part of. You might have doubt in me, whether or not I can actually guide you to enlightenment. You might have doubt in your own ability to get to enlightenment. And you might have doubt in the cycle of rebirth. And this is completely normal and completely common. But as you learn the teachings, you investigate them and examine them, as you reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice, you'll be able to see the truth for yourself. So more and more, you'll be able to see the truth that the cycle of rebirth is actually true. So right now, it's common for somebody to have doubt, but by the time you get even to the first stage of enlightenment, and there's 4 stages of enlightenment, which I'm going to teach you as part of chapter 3, that you won't have doubt even in the first stage of enlightenment. You will have independently verified a significant portion of the teachings of the Buddha. You won't be fully practicing by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, but you will have surveyed all the teachings, you would have dove in to a certain degree, and you would have seen a significant amount of progress in the condition of the mind, that you will have seen this diminishing of discontentedness. By the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, your discontentedness is just a mere fraction of what it once was when you were off the path to enlightenment. So this doubt gets eradicated from the mind, not through blind belief or faith or anything like that. It gets eradicated through investigating and examining the teachings. That's how you actually eliminate your doubt, because you independently verify them through your reflection, and then as you're practicing them, you see the improvement to the condition of your mind. So somebody wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment while doubting the cycle of rebirth, but it's common for somebody to come to the path to enlightenment with doubt. But by the time you fully get to that first stage of enlightenment, you would have eradicated your doubt through all that work to examine the teachings and improve the condition of the mind, where it's now functioning in a more and more improved way. All right, so great questions, guys. Looks like Joseph is sharing something else here. Sometimes I see the expression on people's faces and I decide if it's easy or hard to talk to such a guy with this expression. Do you remember such a thing you did before in life, and what's your opinion? Yeah, I experienced that in the past, that you would look at somebody's face and maybe you would form your feelings based on what somebody else is experiencing. And this is what you're working to get away from, is that you're not forming your inner feelings based on some condition. So right now, when you're looking at somebody's facial expression, you're maybe forming certain opinions and you're adjusting the way that you feel or the way you think based on the way that somebody else is presenting. But you can get to the point where that doesn't affect you, that you can see the look on somebody's face. Somebody could be crying and sobbing in front of you and you don't get upset yourself. It's not because you don't care for this person and not that you're not concerned about their misfortune. It's just that you no longer base your inner feelings on some condition. So what you're working to do is get away from conditioned feelings, where what conditioned feelings are, which those anger, sadness, frustration, and all those others are, is that the mind is experiencing this conditioned feeling, that based on some condition, you're going to form a feeling. So for example, if it's sunny outside, you might get happy. And this is the mind forming its inner feelings based on some condition. The condition is that if it's sunny, I'll be happy. But now the problem with that is, as soon as you form that conditioned feeling, it's a temporary feeling, that it's going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away, because the sun is not permanent. So therefore your happiness, if you base your happiness on the sun, it's not permanent either. So as soon as it starts raining or some other weather event, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. This is the conditionality of your feelings, that the mind having these feelings that arise, they change, and they fade away. And it's not just happening with weather, potentially. It might be happening with your bank account, that if your bank account is one balance, you'll be happy. But if that bank account balance drops, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated. Or if your mom or your dad or your brothers or sisters or your boss or some other person, if they do this thing, you'll be happy. But if they do this thing, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated. This is conditioned feelings, that the mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. By the time you train and you get to enlightenment, your mind is no longer forming its inner feelings on some condition. And here, Joseph, you're describing that you're forming your inner feelings based on the looks of somebody's face and how they're presenting themselves in terms of an expression. So you can eliminate that through eradicating these pollutions of the mind. And that's what this program is about, is to help you understand how to do that and how to accomplish that. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. Thank you all for your questions. It's really great. So I'm going to move to the next thing, is helping you to understand what the teachings of the Buddha are, is by helping you to understand what the teachings of the Buddha are not. This is one of the ways to help you understand what the teachings of the Buddha are, is by explaining to you what the teachings of the Buddha are not. The teachings of the Buddha are not a collection of beliefs, a doctrine, concepts, opinions, or views. That if you believe in these things, then you will experience this pleasant afterlife. And if you don't believe in these things, then you'll experience an unpleasant afterlife. This isn't what the Buddha taught. He's not teaching you to experience an afterlife that is pleasurable. He's teaching you now so that you can learn now in the present moment. And you can reflect now in the present moment. You can practice the teachings now in the present moment, in your present life. And now you can experience the benefits now in this life. That it's not believe, 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 and hope something good happens when you die. So his teachings aren't a collection of beliefs. They're not a collection of doctrine or concepts or opinions or views. These are the natural laws that you can independently verify and see the truth. And then your mind can move to this more peaceful and joyful mental state. While he talks about being reborn in all these various realms, including the heavenly realm, that's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is not to be reborn in some other realm. The ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment in this life so that you can experience the improvement to the condition of your mind in this life. And you can't do that through beliefs, through doctrine, through concepts, through opinions, and through views. So nothing the teachings of the Buddha are about in terms of experiencing this pleasant afterlife if you just believe in things. Because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. When you have belief, you're just believing it because either somebody else convinced you to believe it or you've convinced yourself to believe it. But you don't know what's true or false because you're just believing it. What the Buddha is teaching you is how to get to this wisdom so that you can understand true reality. And this is how your mind awakens to this enlightened mental state, is that you now understand how the world is through these natural laws. The teachings of the Buddha are not a religion. In my opinion, what a religion is there's typically one person at the top of an organization that is telling everybody else what to do and what not to do through rules, through commandments. And there might be certain rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship that you're being taught as part of these teachings or these rules from a person at the top of an organization that then disseminates these rules or these rites and rituals and ceremonies or worship. I'm not sure what you consider to be a religion, but this is how I think about a religion, that there's one person at the top disseminating things throughout the world. There's rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And there's typically rules and commandments that everybody must follow in order to create this peaceful world. If that's the way that you think about religion, the teachings of the Buddha are not a religion. When the Buddha awoke to enlightenment, he didn't say, I discovered a new religion. And while now a lot of people think of the Buddhist teachings as a religion, the Buddha himself, he was not a Buddhist. If you ask the Buddha, are you a Buddhist? He wouldn't understand what that means because that didn't even exist during his lifetime. So while nowadays some people might describe Buddhism as a religion, if you think of religion in the way that I've described here, then the teachings of the Buddha aren't a religion. Because when he awoke from enlightenment, he didn't say, I discovered a new religion. He said, I discovered a better way of life. And here's this better way of life. Here's the way to experience this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. Here's the way I did it. So he's sharing teachings with you that are going to help you accomplish that same thing. There are no rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship because those things don't lead to wisdom. What you're working to do is get to this wisdom. But a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship doesn't produce wisdom in the mind. Same thing with rules and commandments. If somebody just follows a bunch of rules, they don't understand the wisdom of why you've trained your mind to be a certain way. So while other people might describe the teachings of the Buddha as rules, I don't describe them that way. When you read the teachings of the Buddha, what he's providing you is guidance. He's explaining to you what it took for him to be able to get to that enlightened mental state. But they're not rules, and you'll see this as you dive deeper and deeper into his teachings. His teachings aren't punishments and rewards. Sometimes, depending on what you've been taught in various traditions, you might think about punishments and rewards, or mystical, magical, or superstitious or auspicious things. This isn't what the Buddha actually taught. He says very clearly in his teachings that there isn't anything auspicious about his teachings, because he's helping you to cultivate this wisdom. There's no mystical or magical thing that's going to magically change your life. The way to improve what you're experiencing in life is to cultivate wisdom in the mind and make better decisions, so that then you can experience improved results. As long as you lack wisdom, you'll make those unwise decisions just with a lack of wisdom, and you'll experience unwholesome results. Not because you're a bad person or you've done anything wrong necessarily, but just because the mind lacks wisdom, it's going to naturally make unwise decisions, and it's going to produce unwholesome results. The teachings of the Buddha are not something to attempt to force others or convince others to do. Sometimes people think that when they're learning something like this, that they need to go out and convince other people to do the exact same things that they're doing. But that's not what the teachings of the Buddha are about. Everything on the path to enlightenment that the Buddha taught is about transforming your own mind. As I mentioned, you are at the center of his teachings. So you're not looking to attempt to force others or convince others to learn and do the things that you're doing. If somebody asks you about it, if somebody's interested, of course, share that information. But you don't need to go out on the street corner and beat a drum and hold picket signs and try to convince people to do things in the way that you're doing them. That's not how you're going to get to the peace and the joy. By transforming your mind, that's what's going to get to the peace and the joy. So you don't need to force others or convince others to do what you're doing. If somebody does choose to do that, then wonderful. As your mind's becoming more peaceful, over a 3-month, 6-month, 1 year, 3-year period, people are seeing you become more and more peaceful, more joyful. They're seeing you interact in more loving and kind ways. You're becoming more compassionate, more generous. They're probably going to say, hey, what are you doing? And you're going to be like, hey, well, it's the teachings of the Buddha. Just like if you're eating a delicious piece of chocolate cake and somebody saw you eating that piece of chocolate cake, that moisture, that beautiful piece of chocolate cake, they're going to say, hey, can I get a bite of that? It's the same thing, is that when your mind's becoming more peaceful and more joyful, someone's going to say, hey, can I get a bite of that? Where'd you get that from? Where'd you get that peace and joy from? Oh, the teachings of the Buddha? Okay, sure. What do you got? And that's where you can share with them, because they're now interested in understanding what it is that you have. And you might share a book with them. You might share a link with them. You might share a class with them and say, hey, you're welcome to come to this class if you like. The teachings of the Buddha aren't these short, catchy phrases that will produce some kind of benefit in your life. If you're on social media and you see these short, catchy phrases that are oftentimes attributed to the Buddha with his name there or his picture there, 99.9% of the time, that's not even what the Buddha said. You'll see different people that will create these little memes, and they will put some phrase on there, and they'll attach the name of the Buddha, or they'll put a picture of the Buddha on there. And when you actually research that, the Buddha actually didn't say that at all. So people will sometimes publish these short, catchy phrases attributing them to the Buddha, and you might think that that's actually what he taught. So just because you see something on social media that has the name Buddha or the Buddha or a picture of the Buddha, it doesn't mean that he's actually said that. That could be something that somebody else created on their own. They had put the name Buddha on there to now attribute it to the Buddha, when in reality he didn't actually say that particular thing. So there isn't these short, catchy phrases that the Buddha taught. Instead, he has these long discourses that I've extracted out of those some golden nuggets to be able to help you understand how to actually get to this enlightened mental state. So when you see these various things, you can oftentimes just ignore them or disregard them, because it's not actually what the Buddha taught. And then the Buddha's teachings aren't teachings that are stuck in a cultural past that degrades people or judges other people. Sometimes people might try to use the teachings of an individual like the Buddha, or some people do this with Jesus Christ or Prophet Muhammad or other people like this, and they try to degrade or judge other people and look down on other people, and they might attribute that to the Buddha. You might hear people say that the Buddha degraded women or something like this. This is completely untrue. If you learn the original teachings of the Buddha and you see his actual words, you'll never see a time where he degrades anybody, whether it's their race, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, their gender, or anything like that. He never degrades women. Instead, he's teaching people to look at everybody as equal. He teaches people to be respectful and warm and loving and kind. So where you see other people that are using something like the teachings of the Buddha to degrade other people, this is those people choosing to do that. It's not the Buddha himself. That his teachings aren't stuck in this cultural past of 2,500 years ago, because he understood that the world's going to be constantly changing from the time that he taught. So when he taught using this language that is timeless, that you can read his teachings today, and they're just as applicable today as they were 2,500 years ago, because there's no cultural aspects to his language and to what he's teaching in his teachings. All of that is not even there and present. You'll see certain analogies where he's talking about farming or different things like this, and that's what people were aware of during that time frame. But nonetheless, the teaching that he's sharing can be applied to today. He's just maybe using an analogy with farming, where today we might use talking about mobile phone or the internet or driving a car or something like that, where they talked about maybe farming 2,500 years ago. So this is what the teachings of the Buddha are not. And just to kind of summarize this a bit of what I've been sharing with you is that what a Buddha is they're a human being who's independently discovered the teachings that lead to this enlightened mental state without any help from any teachers or any guides. They then share those independently discovered teachings with countless people, guiding them to enlightenment. And then they leave their teachings in such a condition that after their death, countless more people get to enlightenment. And this path to enlightenment, what that is it's a journey of growing and learning and evolving through gaining wisdom and understanding the knowledge of what it takes to produce this pure mind. You're developing this life practice through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. When you study his original teachings, he talks about gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. He actually says very clearly that his enlightenment wasn't instantaneous. It wasn't all of a sudden. So the same thing is going to be true for you, that you're going to need this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And you know this to be true through your own direct experience, because everything you've ever learned in life has been exactly the same way. Whether it's learning English, how to read, write, and speak English, it was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Even native speakers need to go through that process. Or whether it's some job or occupation that you have, it's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that you've come to the ability to perform that job proficiently. So the path to enlightenment is the same way. You're gradually growing and developing and learning and evolving as a human being. Then in terms of what enlightenment is, in a nutshell, it's where the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently, no longer experiencing any discontent feelings. But I'm going to deepen this for you. When we get to chapter 3, I'm going to explain for you what enlightenment is in a much more deeper sense. So let me see if you guys have any questions here about anything that I've shared. And then after this, I'm going to now teach you about the group learning program so that you can understand how to get the most benefits from the group learning program itself. So if you guys have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So we have a question coming in here on Zoom from Marcy. She's saying, "Thank you, Teacher David. It was lovely to see everyone who participated in class today. May you all be well and have a lovely rest of your day." Okay, Marcy must be leaving, or she has left. She's just saying goodbye. I thought it was a question, so that's why I thought I'd read it. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So now what I'm going to do is just share with you a bit about this group learning program so you understand how we're going to approach this to be able to help you to understand the path to enlightenment and be able to move your mind closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. That first, let's talk about what the group learning program is. It's this live, interactive, in-person or online classes to learn the path to enlightenment. The in-person part of this is that here at the temple in Chiang Mai, Thailand, I teach each morning on Sunday and Wednesdays in the group learning program. And students come and attend in person. And you always have that option if you're ever in Chiang Mai to be able to come attend in person. But then also the classes that I teach at the temple and then the classes that I teach here at home, I use Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube to be able to then reach a wider audience and for more and more people to be able to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. So on Sundays and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Thai time and 9 p.m. Thai time, I'm sharing the original teachings of the Buddha and helping you to make your way to this enlightened mental state. And depending on the time zone that you're in, that could be Saturday night or it could be Tuesday night. So like that Sunday, Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. here in Thailand, it could be potentially Saturday evening and Tuesday evening your time. But then the Sunday evening class, which right now is Sunday evening for me, we started talking at 9 p.m., that could be potentially Sunday morning for you, perhaps. So depending on what time zone you're in, you could need to look at this and decide what times would work out best for you. And maybe sometimes you attend one time and other times you attend another time. It's totally up to you when you would like to attend. But those are the times that I'm teaching the group learning program. Each Sunday, I'm going to be teaching a chapter in this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. I'm going to explain to you how to get a version of this book, either for free by downloading it or a printed version. So each Sunday, I'm going to be going chapter by chapter, helping you understand what the teachings of the Buddha are to develop your life practice. When we first get started for the first several weeks, I'm going to be giving you this overview of the path to enlightenment, but then also getting really deep into what's called the Eightfold Path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. And over the next 3 Sundays that are coming up, I'm going to be diving into detail in each one of those sections of the Eightfold Path. In each one of those classes, you're going to be learning with the original words of the Buddha what the core central path to enlightenment is, so that by the end of those 3 classes, you'll have a certain introduction and understanding of the path to enlightenment. And then ultimately, we're going to end up going chapter by chapter each Sunday. And then on Wednesdays, I'm going to be teaching meditation and Pali chanting and opening up to any questions and answers that you guys might have. I do that on Sunday and Wednesday. So on Sundays, we're going to be starting with meditation, and I'll be teaching you and opening up to questions and answering your questions. And then on Wednesdays, I'll be teaching you meditation and actually meditating with you as well and guiding you in meditation and developing your chanting practice. And where you can't attend on Wednesdays, you can actually get the recordings because they're recorded on Facebook, YouTube, and on our podcast. So you might decide to watch the replay on Thursday or Friday or Saturday or some other day. But if you'd like to attend live, these are the times that I'm teaching. And you'll just need to check your local time zone to figure out when those times are. Then there's a Facebook group where I'm posting daily with excerpts from the books. So this particular book of Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, I will start making posts from this book probably in about 4 weeks or 5 weeks. Right now, if you go into that Facebook group, you're going to see posts from other books that I've written. And you also see students asking questions. This is a great place for you to get online and ask questions. You'll be able to ask questions through asking them in these classes. You'll be able to post in the Facebook group, and I'll be able to answer your question there. You'll be able to send me private messages through all the different messaging apps and email and things like that. Or you can schedule personal guidance to be able to help you to be able to talk one-on-one in Zoom or to talk here in Chiang Mai for those of you guys that are in Chiang Mai. So you can get help in all those 4 ways: by asking questions in class, by posting in the Facebook group, and I'm the only one who answers your questions there. Or you can send me a private message, or you can even schedule personal guidance to sit down and we can talk one-on-one, because it's one thing learning in these classes, but it's a whole nother thing applying it to your day-to-day life. So you're able to access getting help in all of those different ways. And there's a book, there's an audiobook, there's a video library with all the times that I've taught this program in the past. There's a podcast where you can listen to audio, and there's even quizzes to be able to help you to be able to confirm your understanding of the individual content that you're learning as part of each individual chapter. So this is what the group learning program is. And then in terms of why would an individual be interested in attending the group learning program, it's to train the mind to attain enlightenment. And we talked about all these different qualities of what it means to be able to get to enlightenment, that the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, that you've eliminated all the discontentedness of the mind, that you'll have this wisdom to be able to face life and life's challenges, having peacefulness in your life. You'll notice this improvement in your personal and professional relationships. You'll notice this focus, concentration, clarity of mind, and deep memory. And of course, by getting to enlightenment, not only do you experience the peace and joy in this life, but you won't experience this continuous rebirth either. Then in terms of how we go forward in the group learning program is that I suggest you acquire one of these books. You can get them for free by going to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com. From there, you'll see a link for free books and you can click on it, or you can just put in this URL, buddhadailywisdom.com/free Buddha books. And from there, the very first book, volume 1, you can download that and read it on your electronic device. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can print it wherever you are in whatever country you're in. Or if you're here in Chiang Mai, you can come and get printed versions at the temple and just reimburse us for our printing cost. Or if you have access to Amazon, these books are on Amazon, so you could order them on Amazon. If you go to Amazon and you search this title, you'd be able to find it. Or you could search my name, David Roylance, and you'll find all the different books that I've published there. So it's important to acquire one of these books because there's certain things in the classes that I teach that aren't in the books. So by coming to the class, you're going to learn certain things that aren't in the books. But then there's certain things in the books that aren't in the classes because it's just easier to write about them than to talk about them. But in some cases, it's easier to talk about things than to write about them. So the combination of reading and coming to class, you'll be able to be fully informed of the teachings of the Buddha. And what I suggest you do is you just read like 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes per day. Sometimes when you're reading a book and you really get into it, you might be interested to read like an hour or 2 or 3. Well, if you're reading that amount of volume, it's kind of like taking a big bite out of a pizza and trying to chew it and digest it. It's really hard to do that. You'd like to take these little bites. Because if you're reading for 10, 15, 20 minutes, it's like taking a little bite. And now you can think about it. You can reflect on it. You can independently verify it. Whereas if you sat down and read for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, it would be really hard for you to digest all of that and then independently verify it. So by just kind of dripping it into the mind little by little, it'll really help you. In some of these chapters, you could probably read the entire chapter in 15 or 20 minutes. There's a couple of chapters that are about an hour worth of reading, but even in that situation, I still suggest you read just 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, just kind of dripping it into your life so that way you have time to breathe and kind of reflect on it and think about what it is that you've read and be able to apply it in your day-to-day life. So acquiring this book will be really helpful for you. And you can get it for free or you can get a printed version in any of those ways that I talked about. What I'm going to be doing is each week sharing a chapter from this book and helping you through the classes on Sunday and Wednesday. And remember, the recordings are available to help you as well. So you can attend at the temple or you can attend online through any of the platforms that we use, either Zoom, YouTube, or Facebook, or you can listen to the podcast as a replay. Keep in mind that this is an independent study program. While I'm here as a guide to help you on your journey, it's an independent journey. You're on your own journey to enlightenment. So that's why you'll need to apply the effort and energy to read the books or listen to the audiobook or watch videos or listen to the podcast or take the quizzes and ask questions. How much of that or how little of that you choose to do is up to you, but all these resources are available for you. You're not going to be able to digest everything that I do because there's a lot of content, there's a lot of classes that I teach, but you'll need to be able to kind of learn by using these different resources and decide for yourself what's working and what's not working. So some people learn really well by reading, some people learn really well by coming to class, some people might read first and then come to class, some people might come to class first and then read. Some people learn really well with audiobooks. I know when I wrote these books, even preparing for the classes, sometimes I would use the audiobook to help refresh my memory of what I actually wrote, because you can listen to the pure audio of the audiobooks if you like, but there's actually a version where you can read, you can see on the screen that the book is actually there on the screen while I'm reading it to you. Or you can have the book in your hands and be looking at it while you're hearing the audio of me reading it. So combining the reading and the listening will actually help you retain it a lot better. And always keep in mind that as you're learning and you're growing, that there's no belief in the teachings. There's independent verification of the truth through your learning, reflection, and practicing. And you're also going to need to establish a daily meditation practice of breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. Each Sunday and Wednesday, I'll be doing meditation with you, and you're always welcome to join any of the classes that I teach. You can even just come in and meditate and then decide to leave if you like, if that's what you're choosing to do. You don't necessarily have to stay the entire class. You can come and go as you please. So as you gradually build up this meditation practice, that's what's going to help you to move the mind closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. And you might decide to set aside anything that you've learned in previous places, because what you've learned in other places have led you to this point, but you might find that certain things that you're learning are in conflict with what you've learned before. And this is actually a really good thing, because if what you're learning from me is exactly the same things that you already know, then there's no use to actually learn with me, because you actually already know all the things that I'm sharing with you. But if you're in a class where what I'm sharing with you conflicts with what you currently think you know or you currently understand, this is opportunity for growth and for development. So if you've learned rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship connected to the teachings of the Buddha, and now I'm teaching you that that's not the case and that's not what the Buddha taught, this is actually really good for you. This is really helpful to be able to see that. And then where you're confused or you need clarification, just ask questions and ask me, why, David? Why is it that the Buddha didn't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship? Is there some place in the original teachings of the Buddha that you can point me to that I can independently verify that? So I can help you with those kinds of things. So where you see different conflicts and different places where you're not understanding, just ask questions and I'll be able to help you. And then in terms of understanding the way to approach your learning on the path to enlightenment is to remember that everything you've ever accomplished in life has been accomplished through effort and through energy. That nothing great or wonderful or magnificent has ever been accomplished through complacency. That you're going to get out of the group learning program what you put into it. If you put effort and energy into learning and growing on the path to enlightenment, then you're going to accomplish something wonderful, that your mind's going to be moving closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. So as you decide to put forth dedication and determination and effort and energy to be diligent in your learning and growing, then you'll be able to see the results. So keep that in mind, that you're going to experience out of this program what it is you decide to put into it for your own benefit and your own growth. And then lastly, just kind of talking about the schedule for what we're actually going to be doing over the coming Sundays and the coming Wednesdays, is today was the first Sunday where I'm just kind of welcoming you and giving you an introduction to the group learning program. But then in the second, third, and fourth Sunday, I'm going to be teaching you the Eightfold Path. I'm going to break it down into 3 different sections: the wisdom section, the moral conduct section, and the mental discipline section. So then that at the end of those 3 classes, you'll understand the core central teaching of the Buddha that everything else plugs into. And then on the 5th class on Sunday, I'm going to be teaching you those 10 fetters, those individual pollutions that the Buddha taught, and the 4 stages of enlightenment and how the mind moves through those 4 stages. But then on the 6th Sunday, that's where I'm going to start with chapter 1, and I'm going to then go chapter by chapter by chapter for the remaining time of the program each Sunday. So that's where you might decide to start reading. Right now, if you'd like to start reading the book, you could read the preface, and you could read chapter 4 and chapter 5, because that's what I'm going to be teaching you over the next 3 Sundays, is chapter 4 and chapter 5. So if you'd like to read those things, that would actually help you to slowly start reading and understanding the Eightfold Path. And then on Wednesdays, starting this Wednesday, I'm going to do a 4-part series to help you learn breathing mindfulness meditation. Each Wednesday, I'll be teaching you breathing mindfulness meditation and doing breathing mindfulness meditation with you to help you build up your practice. And as I mentioned, if you can't attend the Wednesday classes, you have the recordings. And then after that, we'll do a 4-part series on learning loving kindness meditation, because you're going to need to learn this one as well. Then on the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th Wednesdays, I'm going to be teaching you to learn Buddhist chanting. And then from that point forward, I'll be doing the rotation of breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation each Wednesday, where I'll guide you in a breathing mindfulness meditation and a loving kindness meditation, and then open up to any and all questions that you might have. And I'll be doing that in each individual class. So let me know if you guys have any questions on the group learning program itself. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, it looks like, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, is that Bettina is asking the question, is the Sunday class also recorded or only the Wednesday class? All the classes are recorded, even the Sunday classes. The classes at the temple and the classes that I do here at home, they're all recorded. You can go into our YouTube channel and you're going to see a playlist for the group learning program that's from March to October 2024. And from there, you're going to see all the classes on our YouTube channel. And you'll also see them in Facebook and on our podcast as well. So you're going to see a class for today, one from this morning and one from today, this evening. And they're going to be there as soon as I'm done with classes. They'll already be there on the YouTube channel and in Facebook. The podcast gets published about 2 or 3 days after the class, so you'll see that as well. So you'll have access to all of those. Okay, I'm seeing some thank yous here from Joe and Brent. You guys are welcome. Pleased to help you guys. Let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. I'm not seeing any questions anywhere else. So what I'm going to do is just end class by thanking all of you guys. Thank you for attending. Thank you for choosing to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. Thank you for your dedication and effort to learn and practice these teachings, because as you're learning and practicing, it's helping you to become a more and more peaceful individual. It's helping those around you, because the people around you are going to be experiencing more and more peace and joy from you. There's going to be less and less harm. And you're helping all of humanity, because you're becoming more and more peaceful. You're causing less and less harm in the world. So at the end of each class, I will tend to thank the students for your dedication and your diligence to learning and practicing the teachings. So perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes, and have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.